Rick.
Tom, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
It's a long time since we chatted.
I know. It's like you traveled the whole country just to get to another episode.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I love having you on the show because there's so much insight on the shop efficiency side and on the actual hands on the workbench and making a move faster, smarter, more efficiently.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to share my knowledge and share with you some of the experiences I've gone through as a cabinet maker and just some of the struggles, dealing with some folks out there in the industry who have issues and want to find efficiency. So yeah, I'm always happy to help.
Well, and some people don't know you as well as I do, and some people have heard your other episodes. I mean, I had you on, geez, almost a year and a half ago now, talking about the foreman, which is a really key piece of, obviously, shop efficiency. But can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and why you're talking to a world of cabinet makers?
Well, cabinet making is something I've always dreamt of doing or working with wood at least. And I was 5 years old. I remember, asking my parents for a wood book or a tree book because I wanted to identify all the trees. And so I knew that something, I always wanted to do something with trees and wood. So yeah, I'm a cabinet maker by trade and cut my teeth, of course, being an apprentice, and then moved on to being a journeyman cabinet maker and then a foreman and the production manager. And now I'm sort of consulting in that field, just helping folks, with training, with lean and productivity issues and just help wherever I can to take down barriers and improve communications and things like that. So it's a lot of fun working with industry folks and seeing some of the struggles. And what you see a lot of is a sort of the same issues crop up. It doesn't matter which industry you go to or which firm you go to. They share a lot of the same problems.
Yeah, same challenges. Well, today, one of the challenges, because you and I have sort of brainstormed on this because the SWIFT program for shop efficiency that you and I are doing, lots of people already know about that. We'll touch on it later in the interview. But today we're going to be talking about the problem, which is I don't want to sell too much because then we can't build it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You hear that one?
I hear that one, and I hear the flip side too, where the shop can produce so much and the sales aren't coming in. So it's a balanced approach, and it has to be, right. So so it's very, very important that there is good communication between the front end sales staff and the office staff and with the folks in the back, the production. What's capable, what are we able to do? Is the equipment up and running? Do we have the proper staff? Do we have the right people? Because, a lot of times, they're short of employees, right? People are away on holiday, people are sick, people are going to cabinet making school because as an apprenticeship program, sometimes you have to remove those folks for 2 months. They have to go to school and get that part of their trade, the schooling, the technical part.
Yeah.
So, the shop isn't always have all the people in it that they need to do the work. So it's very important that there's this communication process in place between the front end and sales. Let's talk about sales then specifically, and the folks in the back, so that we can balance the workload, and we can make sure that we don't overpromise and underdeliver.
Yeah. Let's put some context on this whole delivery and sales process, because some people listen to these episodes and think, well, I'm too small. This is interesting, but it doesn't apply to me. And then other people listening are going to say, well, we're really big, so this doesn't apply to us because we do X and Y and Z, and maybe they do some other fabricating, more complex procedures. Just so that we understand where you're coming from, what's the scope of the shops you've worked with? Maybe I don't want to say the smallest or the biggest, because money is not the only measurement. You can do it in numbers of people or in revenue, or what's the smallest shop and what's the biggest shop, however you define it.
Well, we can do revenue because that's easy for folks to understand. I mean, I've worked with shops that have had 2 people and do, 250,000 in sales or 500,000, and I've worked with shops that have done 18 million in sales a year. So there's a whole gambit there in between, but understand that the systems that need to be in place are going to be similar for a smaller shop who does less sales and a larger shop. You have to put systems in place if you want to run efficiently and if you want to meet certain targets. And again, I'm going to talk about this KPIs, these key performance indicators, taking measurements, right? So if you aren't taking measurements or you don't know where you're at, then if you aim for nothing, you're going to hit it every time, right, Dom? Because we don't know.
It's like
if you say, Rick, glad for showing up today at work, and you're going to work at your bench, great. But if you don't tell me what the expectations are for the day, then I'm going to meet them.
That's
you
right.
can't come to me tomorrow and say, hey, Rick, you didn't finish that reception desk. Well, you didn't tell me that.
You didn't tell me it was due.
So guess what? Better let me know. You better have clear expectations there. And this working from home environment too, we're hearing a lot of that now too, where companies are concerned because they don't feel the productivity is going to be there.
Right.
And I always chuckle to myself and say, well, then you better let each person know what their expectation is. Just because working from home shouldn't matter. You got to check with them and say, hey, I gave you this project to work on. I gave you 3 days. This is the fourth day. How are you doing with it? Is it done? I don't have your report yet. So you need to know. You better have a script there, and you better understand. And so I think it relates back to what you just talked about here about, we're scared to sell more because we're not sure the shop's going to make it. Well, you better know what the shop's able to produce. You better know how long things take. Then you'll know how to fill up the production schedule from the sales side and how to schedule it time-wise.
Yeah. So a moment ago, you mentioned measure things. I think you said measure everything. But for somebody who's maybe got their head down in the sawdust a little bit, they're like, well, I do measure things. I measure the kicks. I measure the doors. I measure the depth. But that's not what you're talking about here. You're talking about measuring business indicators, which really is what this whole podcast is about. This is about the business of the cabinetry business. But can you give us a couple examples? You're a lean manufacturing specialist. I'm a business operations specialist. You and I are doing this series now with this SWIFT assessment. And it's interesting that we come at it from slightly different places, you more floor-based, me more office-based, but we're talking about the same thing. What are the measurements we're trying to keep track of?
Well, for someone who doesn't, keep some hard measurements of things that are going on, I always say, well, start with something quite simple. Like if you're a kitchen cabinet manufacturer, you're going to know how many boxes you can produce in a day, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're sending your salespeople out and say, look, get us jobs. Hey, I got I sold 3 kitchens this week. Okay, so how many boxes in that kitchen and how much work is involved? Is it a more customized kitchen, a little bit more work involved in adding trinkets to it to bring it up to a higher price point? Not a better quality, don't get me wrong. It has to be a higher price point because you're adding more value to it. So you better know what is the shop able to produce, then I know what to go out and sell. So number of boxes, if it's not number of boxes, then it might be units of production. It would be, look, what are we doing yearly sales? We know that figure. We should be able to grab that, right? And then we say, okay, break it down over 52 weeks. So in 1 week, this is what the sales represents. And then break that down again further into a daily production target of, okay, if I want to do $1 million in sales in a year, what's that per week and what's that per day? And I better be measuring, did I produce that amount to fulfill that sales target or that yearly sales? Because if you didn't, then guess what? Tomorrow you better work twice as hard so you can play catch up, or you're not going to make your targets.
It's $83,333 a month to be $1 million contractor. And in some ways, that's not that hard. And in other ways, that's really hard to get to.
Yeah.
Right? So those are the things we measure. So thank you for that. Because the more we measure, and the better it is for us. But it can be difficult if you think you have to measure everything. And so there's key indicators, which is why I use the word KPI. For people who aren't familiar with it, it stands for key performance indicator. It's just one number. All that means is one number that represents a really important thing that if you went to dig into it, there were 10 other numbers attached.
Mhm.
So you could say sales as a KPI, but behind that is how many leads did we deal with? How many of those leads did we sell? What was the dollar value of those? And we would just call it a sales number. That's a KPI as an example.
Mhm. Exactly.
If somebody tuned in, sorry, did you have a point there, Rick?
Well, just I was going to talk about, another type of KPI rework, but maybe we can come touch on that after. Maybe make your point first.
Well, I was going to come back to the title, which is I'm afraid to sell too much. But if rework is holding you back, I don't want to sell because we've got rework. Or one of the best lines I ever heard from a architecture millwork shop is, he goes, "We want our logo to be the truth, which is we do it right because we do it twice."
Yeah.
But they said that's probably not good marketing. But yeah, let's throw rework in the mix here if that's the thing holding people back.
Yeah, rework is one of the ones that I challenge millwork shops and woodworking folks to measure. And I've gotten the full gambit of responses back to that. I've gotten, the very positive response. Yeah, I think that's important. We feel that we could make some significant improvements and reduce the rework. And I have other shops that say, yeah, every shop has rework. So what, Rick? If it breaks or something is wrong with it, we just throw extra guys at it and fix it. I said, well, that's great, but how much is that costing you? And it steals time away from your production schedule, so you can't put more sales in.
Yeah, you become reactive.
Yeah,
you become reactive as a business. Yeah. We do on this show and on other episodes, I've talked about the cost of sending one van with one man out to do one job. I had a conversation just today about a guy who said they sub out their painting to a paint shop because they're a growing shop. They're trying to figure out their place in the world. And so they sub out the paint part. Well, a panel didn't come back. And so the installers are on site doing the island and there's no end panel. So now what has to happen? Somebody's got to get in a van. That's a man out. That's a van out. Go to get the panel. Hopefully the panel's right by the time it gets there. Figure it's about $800. That's without knowing any critical details about a company. So every time we do that, that's $800 that you should have been taking home to your family.
Yeah, well, I always use this benchmark. If you have rework and you catch it in the shop before it gets shipped out, and you have to remake it, it costs you 3 times the cost of what that unit is. So if it's a panel and you've got to remake it, and you find it in the shop, it costs you 3 times the selling cost of that panel. If you don't see it, and you don't catch it, and it goes out to the customer, and they find it, and they say, I'm not accepting this panel because it has a run in it, or the veneer's lifting, or whatever the case may be, it costs you 6 times, at least 6 times the cost. Because now you're involving an installer to go back and get it, bring it back to the shop, then you have to remake it, and then he takes it back out. But the other issue then is you've got the taste in the mouth from the customer's point of view.
They don't trust anything.
An issue, and the mistrust, and I can't really recommend this guy to my friend, because we're not sure. So so you lose that credibility, right, with word of mouth and references and so on. So there's costs there that you don't even know what it's going to cost you in future sales.
Oh, right, yeah. They tell 2 friends and so on and so on. So when we have the topic on the table for today, which is I'm afraid to sell too much, I suppose the reason behind that can be anything. One of them is we're doing a lot of rework. One of them is my shop is at the max. One of them is we're out of space. One of them is we don't have credit facilities to buy the product, to sell the product until we collect on it. But what would you do? You're a lean, continuous improvement expert. What would you do if you walked into a shop who said, I don't want to oversell because my guys can't produce it?
Well, and then so I would ask then some more specific questions. So what is it exactly that your guys are running into? Like, what are you seeing? You obviously you have that comment you made, so you've got to base it off of past experience and history. So give me some examples of where you've seen this happening in the past. So yeah, we do a lot of rework. Maybe we don't have our processes are mapped out, but our guys don't follow them. So there's all these questions that I would ask so I could specifically get to the root cause of why do you feel you can't sell more? let's find out what the root cause are of that, and then let's see if we can go in there and make some improvements and take down some of those barriers.
That's
So
right.
then things become more efficient in the shop, and then can sell more.
That root cause idea that you just brought up, it sounds like something you talk about when you're sitting in an MBA course in an Ivy League college, but it really is the key to finding so many things. And, I often say a beagle can only chase so many bunnies. So as a business owner, you've got to choose which issue you're going to chase and just chase that one until you fix it. It'll become a bottleneck later, for sure. But right now, just fix that one thing. So I'd put this challenge out to anybody listening and who's picking apart what Ric is saying about shop efficiency. I'll put this challenge out. Think about a problem that you have in the shop right now. And let's just use this panel example just as one thing. That panel costs money, it's a headache, it's a hassle for all those reasons. But why did that panel not come back to the installers? So think about the root cause. Well, it didn't come back because it didn't go out. Well, why didn't it go out? And do that root cause. Okay, so what happened for it not to go out? And sometimes, Ric, it's a little box in an Excel spreadsheet that is done wrong, or a misunderstanding, or go ahead, throw your answers in.
Well, I mean, you're getting to the point I wanted to make was you need to ask why at least 5 times.
Ooh, I love it.
Because you asked the first why didn't the panel come back? Well, he didn't. The finisher didn't ship it. Well, why didn't the finisher ship it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you forgot it. Well, why did you forget it? Did you not have a proper, maybe you didn't have a proper shipping list. Maybe, if I send 150 components over to the finisher to have finish, then I better get 150 back, not 149, not 151.
Or 152.
I have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And we got too many pieces. Yeah.
So again, then it's going to speak to what is your process? Is the process being followed? And sometimes that's boring. Like, it's like we don't want to do that. We're fast. We want to be quick. We want to get it to the customer, but sometimes being quick means that we're inefficient because now we miss something. And now because we miss something, it's actually going to take us longer than if we would have taken the right amount of time at the beginning to do it properly.
Yeah.
We need to ask why 5 times. Is it happening often on many jobs, or is it just this one? Because if it's just this one and the rest of the time, within 10 months and then it happens again, well, then it's not happening that often. And we need to find some lower hanging fruit. Things that are being done continuously wrong, let's focus on those things and shore those up first.
Yeah.
And then we'll get to those ones that only happen once in a blue moon.
So, Ric, I'm listening to the show right now. I'm running a good-sized shop. I'm pretty happy with the way things are. But my question is, I'm afraid to sell too much. Maybe we've got some rework. I've just heard you say, identify the problem, ask why 5 times. And so I'm listening to that, and I think, okay, I'll sit down with a piece of paper, and I'll write across the top of the paper the problem. Panel not coming back from painter. And then on the left column, I'm going to write the word why 5 times. What do you want me to do next after that 5th why? What do I do?
Well, hopefully if at the 5th why, you've got to the root cause, and that should give you some indication of what it is you may need to fix. Now, you may need to put a better process in place. If the process is in place and it's well documented and well established, then you need to train your folks so that they follow it. Because it could be that they're not following it all the time. I didn't follow it because I was rushed. Well, so we know that when things are rushed, we miss things. So don't be rushed. Let's say we're thorough, right? I mean, if I do something for you and it costs money and I'm going to charge you, $750, let's say, you're going to pay me $750. You're going to pay me $500 because you're $250 short. So I'm going to make sure that you're not short, right? So pay that kind of attention to your business and your processes because it's important. Yeah. Because if it's not important, then why are you doing it, right? If it's not important, don't do it. But if it's important, then put a process in place and follow it. and make it better all the time, because there's always a way you can improve it. You know, you get it up to a certain level. Let's raise the bar now and do it even better. You know,
Yeah.
do more in a shorter amount of time, but maintain the quality.
This is, I'm going to ask your opinion on this, and I don't know if there's any science behind it, but I'll ask you, and perhaps everybody else who's listening can ask themselves the same question. When somebody on the floor is not doing a good job, do you think it's because they don't care or they don't know?
Well, in my experience, normally it's because they don't know.
Yeah.
And then that speaks to training. And see, that's another KPI you can be doing once we get, you know, a little deeper and more into things and you've made some improvements. You know, how much training time are you giving to your employees? Because that's important. You know, I heard somebody say once, you know, I'd rather have an employee work for me, I train him and he leaves. Because we're always afraid that if we train employees, they're going to go to the competition, right?
Yeah.
Is that I'd rather train somebody and they leave as opposed to they stay with me forever, right?
And I don't train them. I don't train them and they stay.
Now if you're going to have that inefficiency forever, whereas if I can train a guy and he then bumps it up to the next level, then that's my standard. That becomes a standard way of doing things. Whether he leaves and I have another employee and I train him and he follows suit, but it doesn't matter. We want to be sure that we have standards in place and we follow that, right?
Yeah. You know,
it could be another KPI.
It's another KPI. So one of the ways that we track KPIs is through dashboards and whiteboards. And you and I are, that's, you know, one of the key pieces of what we do. But I often hear people say, when you say train this guy, uh-oh, Rick, are you telling me to have more meetings with people? And I'll interrupt before I get you to ask. I often get that comment or even a look, you know, because I do lots of Zoom calls with people, and and I get this weird look, and they're like, oh, here goes Rubino. He wants me to have more calls, more meetings. Yes, I do want you to have more meetings, but I want you to have better, shorter meetings, not more waste of time meetings. Because in my mind, and this is where the question is, I think meetings are for two things: communication and accountability. What's your thought about these meetings?
Well, meetings are like the communication meeting. We can call it a dashboard. We can call it a huddle board. You know, whatever you want to call it. They're the way I train them to industry folks is it's a 5-minute meeting every day, and 5 minutes a day over the course of the year only represents 1% of your workers' time, working time. So it's a small, very small piece of the pie when you talk about their whole productivity working time during the course of the year. But you have an agenda, as you say. It has to be short. It has to be to the point. So you follow an agenda. There has to be an objective. And there's 4 things that I always train when I install huddle boards and I give the training for them. Is you're only focusing on 4 things, and they're in no particular order. One isn't more important than the other. They're all equally important. It's production, quality, safety, and keeping costs down, keeping costs in check, working within the budget. Those 4 things are only what every employee in the company should be working on, whether you're an owner, whether you're in the front office staff, whether you're an installer, you're out on the shop floor, you're a maintenance guy, it doesn't matter. Yeah. If you're doing something outside of those 4 things, I would question whether you should be doing them.
So production, quality,
safety,
and costs.
Keeping costs down. Working within the budget.
Yeah. I'm a big, big fan of preset meetings. And, you know, one of the things that I get back as a reaction is, Dom, you don't understand. We're so busy. I can't do that. I can't tell you what I'm doing this Thursday or next Thursday. But I challenge that. I know what you're doing next Thursday. You're going to show up to work at the same time you always show up. You're going to have lunch at the same time you always have lunch. Some people are laughing, of course, because they don't take lunch. But that can go on a calendar.
Yeah.
I can build, if I don't build my calendar, if I don't build my systems on purpose, then my systems get built for me by somebody else. And that's where this whole thing comes down to, is, are you building the business on purpose? So is there a simple answer, Rick, to I'm afraid to sell too much?
Well, I mean, I think there is a simple answer that's, to me, it means, okay, we better look at why you're saying that. And then we better look at what do we need to do to shore that thinking up and make, if we have to make some changes in the shop, then we better understand what the root causes are, and let's shore that up. And it could be that we just need to train our folks better,
Yeah.
so that the quality comes up, right? And then go out and sell. Because I've had the reverse. I've worked with a company where the owners told me, these guys in this department, they're inefficient. We want you to go in there and help them out. So I go in there and help them out. We bring up the efficiencies. And then what happened? The sales didn't come in. So now the guys are saying in the shop floor, well, we're not getting the work.
Yeah.
So the work that they have, they're going to stretch it out over the time they have. Yeah. Right? Then they become more inefficient again. So it's a real catch-22. It's a real fine line you have to balance. You have to bring enough sales to force the guys on the people on the floor to work to that capacity that they're able to fulfill. Not overdo it, not a lot of overtime and headaches, but give them the right information that they need when they need it. Bring the products to them when they need it, the supplies.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff isn't back ordered. Oh, this wasn't ordered, the hardware. Well, how can I do it? Like I talk about fit and finish all the time. And this could be why there are rework and quality issues in the shop floor. And it has nothing to do with the guys on the shop floor. It has to do with, hey, we didn't bring the product in, or it wasn't there when they needed it.
Yeah.
The hardware wasn't there, or the stain, the finish sample isn't approved yet by the customer, and the finisher's ready to put the finish on.
That's a systems.
So you can't blame the shop for that. We have to blame the project coordinator or the manager who's managing that project from the front end.
Yeah.
To make sure they have what they need. And it's, we talk about this too, you and I, Dom. It's not an us versus them. It's not the front office staff versus the shop. And I get this complaint a lot. I'll go to the shop floor and try to find some inefficiencies and help break down barriers. And they always tell me, oh, those guys in engineering, they always give us the wrong information. Or the project manager didn't. It's always them. Somebody else did it, and that's why I can't do my job.
Yeah.
Guess what, guys and gals? The firm, it's one team. You have to work together as a team and figure this stuff out. So it's not us versus them, because it's only one team.
Yeah. Well, I love this question about, I'm afraid to sell too much, because then we can't produce it. I come at these things from the office side, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'll tell everybody that. I'm a business guy. There's something that's true for any manufacturing business. Doesn't matter what we're making. You could be making food, you could be making cars, you could be making cabinets, you could be making surfboards or toothpicks. Doesn't matter. We all have an unlimited capacity to sell and a limited capacity to produce. And I will oversell if I've got the project managers who can help me sub it out and manage it. Because there's a lot of great shops out there that I can get to build for me. Mm-hmm. But let's keep it in the shop on this side, Rick. This SWIFT assessment that you and I have created a little bit of buzz since the last time you were on the line here. Can I remind everybody what it is?
Absolutely.
So Rick is a continuous improvement expert. And so a couple of weeks ago on this show, we rolled out this beta program. And a beta program means it's an advanced trial. We know we're going to do this, but we have to get our systems, Rick and Dom's systems, figured out first. Just like anything, we want a lean, efficient process for this thing. So the SWIFT assessment is the new COVID-inspired virtual 2020 version of the old thing where you used to get Rick on an airplane, fly him in to look at your shop, tour him around for a day, day and a half, take him for lunch, and then he goes and puts together a report, gives you the report of the findings, and then you implement the recommendations. Good big picture so far, Rick?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what we're doing now as a SWIFT assessment is we had room for 5 people to do this. We now only have room for 2 more applicants because 3 spots got taken right away. The 2 other spots that didn't get taken, the companies were too small and didn't qualify. They really couldn't make the most of the SWIFT assessment. So if you're listening to this show and you're interested in shop efficiency, then there's 2 more spots available. We'd like you to fill out an application. In order to do this, first of all, it's $750 US to do the SWIFT assessment, which is way below what it'll go to market for after we get through our beta, our kickoff launch. But what'll happen is this. Here's our process. You send a text message to me, to Dominic, and my cell phone number is 604-837-8361. And all you do in the text message is just say the word SWIFT, SWIFT. And then I'll start the process with you and get things going. You'll get an application from us. Step 2 is Rick and I will review that application and get back to you. We want to make sure that your company's the right size, that you've got the technology to be able to do things on video, that you could take, what is it, Rick? You want a video of their shop, right?
I want a video of their flow of the product, but I would like to do it in reverse. So I want to know the last thing you do to the product,
yeah,
second last, and going back in reverse, because it makes you think a little more carefully about the process steps that you do to get your product out the door to your customer.
So interesting.
Shooting it in reverse almost.
Yeah.
This is what I do, and then this is what I do. Do it, 3 steps before it goes out the door, and all the way back to the raw good. So it just forces you to think a little more carefully about all the process steps.
Yeah. And we're talking about a video taken with the phone.
Right. Yeah.
Not a full production facility where you've got the news crew down there on their lunch hour taking it.
That's right.
Yeah. So once we approve your application and you've made the payment, then Rick is going to take over. There's going to be an advanced questionnaire that you need to fill out. The invoice will go out to you, and then you'll start off with Rick. And we expect, how long do you think the whole process will take to turn around from start to finish?
Well, if once I review the detailed questionnaire and then I get a chance to review the video footage and sort of look at the flow, I would say, a few days and I can come up with a executive summary report, and then and then from there, I think you and I will review that, and then we'll do a debrief with the customer. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, like a live debrief where all of us are on a Zoom call. And I think that's also a great place to have other business partners in, your foreman, production manager, whoever else, shop staff, if you got a finishing manager, PMs. But it'd be a great place to have that third-party perspective that Rick and I would provide so that the owner could say, hey, listen, here's the plan. We need to follow a plan, and you can blame us, Rick. Have we ever been blamed before?
Well, I tell owners that you make me the bad guy, because sometimes the business owner already knows where the inefficiencies are, and he or she may already have been harping with the folks about you should do it this way, try to do it this way, and they're just not listening. So sometimes an outside set of eyes or an outsider coming saying it gives a little more credence to it.
Yeah, the perspective of fresh eyes.
Fresh eyes, yeah.
Fresh eyes. I love it. So anybody who's interested, I'll say the cell phone number again, then Rick will go to a couple more questions. But if you're interested, send an application, and you start that process by sending a text message to me. My cell number is 604-837-8361. And just send the word SWIFT, and that's how you start in the process. And like I say, then I'll send you an application online to fill in and get yourself started. Now, please keep in mind, we're doing this in late September, early October of 2020. So if you're listening to this as an old episode and it's the year 2021, I don't mind telling you, this ain't going to be $750 anymore. Once we get our systems worked out, we'll call it market pricing, Rick, like when you sit down for lobster.
Right.
How's that?
Either that or they have access to the DeLorean time machine, and they can right?
Yeah, go back. That's the best movie trilogy ever. Back to the Future. One of my favorite. Nothing better to watch if you're feeling sick. Right. So if I'm a shop, though, and I'm afraid to sell too much, let's talk about just a couple easy steps for finding a couple of efficiencies that we can go after right away.
Well, I mean, with capturing a video, sometimes I see something that the workers or the owners don't see. I'll give you an example. I did have a snapshot of a CNC operator in one company, and they were processing some panels on a nested base CNC router. And then I noticed that the picture where the CNC operator then had the panel off of the CNC after it had been processed on there, and he was doing some additional routering on the panel. So I asked the question, so So what's up with that? Look, what is this person doing? And again, you know, why is this happening? I'm asking why. I'm asking what's going on because I'm trying to understand. I think I know, but I want them to tell me
Yeah.
so that I can verify it. So I saw them routering, and so the explanation was we can't router all the way through the sheet because the vacuum on the router isn't that great, and then the pieces move. So they were leaving some tabs. So, you know, some people leave onion skin, they leave a thin layer, but this company, they left tabs, so they'd router all the way through, then you'd leave a section so that the panel was fixed in the
Still held. Right.
Yes. And then he was routering those pieces off. So then I said, okay, I asked if we could improve the vacuum on the table of the nested base router so that the person could router all the way through. Would that be of value to you? Oh, absolutely. I said, and so how much time is being spent on routering? And so they were making one type of unit or one type of product, and they would do about 200 of these units a year, and each unit needed 6 sheets. So what we found when I asked, I said, you know, how long does it take the guy to router out the parts on a sheet? They said, well, it spends about 5 minutes per sheet, you know, cutting all the parts completely out. And then there's 6 sheets per unit, so that's 30 minutes per unit. And then because they make 200 a year, that's 100 hours. So I said, geez, if we could reduce that by only 50%, never mind eliminate it, because I'm saying, look, let's be realistic. Let's say we could cut that down to 50%. So that's 50 extra hours. So Don, what would you do with 50 extra hours if I said, I'm going to give you 50 hours, right?
I would sell more work into the shop.
Sell more, absolutely.
We're answering the topic of the episode,
So,
right? Yeah.
I mean, listen, and these are the types of things that maybe we can see on the videos that folks are going to shoot and send us, right? Because then an outside set of eyes might see something that they totally missed, right?
It's the power of
let's see
perspective.
how we can help them. Right?
Yeah. And that happens in so many places. You know, I suppose that example you have can be repeated in umpteen, just so many different ways. If a company doesn't have a standard way of doing splines, one guy does it one way, one does it another, and suddenly things don't match. You're just, does that even qualify as rework? Now you're just trying to fix something before the boss catches it.
Well, I mean, you know, companies need to also be aware of there might be 3 or 4 different ways to do the same thing.
Well, true, yeah.
But we need to find the most efficient and most effective way to do it, and then train that to everybody so they all do it the same way, right? I mean, I get folks that tell me, you know, Rick, we're a custom shop. We don't do just simple boxes or you know, we do every project we do is
everything's different. Custom. Yep.
I said, that's cool. Parts don't always repeat, but processes do. You've got to cut. You've got a CNC router. You've got to sand. You've got to dowel. You know, you've got to put a finish on. You've got to put hardware on. You have to do final assembly. You have to wrap it. You have to put it on a truck or ship it somewhere. You've got to install it. So those processes they repeat. What you're doing, you know, it's a big piece I have to sand. It's got a custom green stain versus a clear finish. I get that those are different, but you're still applying a finish.
Yeah.
You still have to have it sanded to the right quality level that your customer is paying for.
Yeah.
That better be a standard process that you're following.
I'm so happy that you brought that one up, the answer, but we're a custom shop. Because I hear it too, and I thought maybe it was just me. Maybe I was asking the wrong kind of questions.
No, we all hear it, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, I mean, there's a lot of pride that goes into that. Like we do custom work, so we take that extra bit of care to make sure that what we're doing is custom, and people call on us because we can do custom. I get it, but your answer is great. It's the
processes are repeating, but the parts don't. I get
that's
that.
Right. Yeah,
that's how we have to look at the process steps. Right?
Yeah. As we move into business ownership and as we become better leaders of companies, it's our job to find problems and fix them. It's just, that's what the job is. And so finding these challenges on the floor, finding these challenges in the office, by the way, Rick, this does not only apply to the floor. Efficiency applies to paperwork. You know, how many times have you gone in and seen inconsistent naming for parts? One person calls it a pedestal, the other calls it a heavy base, the other calls it the end unit base. How do you track that? The project manager's losing their hair. I mean, it's not just the floor.
No, and when we're talking to each other and we can give us an explanation of what it is, that's fine, but you're losing time. But guess what? If you're inputting it into a software program, you better call it what it's supposed to be, because the software program doesn't discern between the mistake if you called it the wrong thing, right? So you have to be careful. That nomenclature is really important, that we call, that we have a defined part name and a defined product name for all the different materials we're using. So we better be careful that we're following the standard process.
Yeah. Wow. An amazing amount of depth here. And all of this from the opening question. I'm afraid to sell too much because then the shop can't keep up and produce it. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to go. Rick, I'm hoping people take us up on this SWIFT assessment. I'm eager to do it. So the people that are taking part in this beta program, there's a couple extra things that I'd like to mention as well. If you take part in the beta and you get the introductory rate, because we're still working out our process for doing it, we're also going to ask you if we can videotape the debrief. Videotape sounds so old. Doesn't it sound old? We're going to use a Betamax to play it back. What did I just say? We're going to use Zoom. We're going to record the Zoom call. But we'd also like to be able to use your comments as a shop owner and say, this was our situation, this was the solution, this was the outcome. That kind of information is important both to us and to you. But we want to share that information with everybody who listens to the show.
Sure.
Yeah. So again, folks, if you want to take part in this, there's 2 spots left at the time that we're taping this. I said it again. Jeez. Rewind your cassettes, folks. Yeah, you can tell now what color hair I have, even if you're not listening to the podcast. Gee. But go ahead and just send that text message off to me. My cell number. It's 604-837-8361. Just send the code word SWIFT, and then I'll take care of everything from there. And then you make the payment. You'll do the advanced application, and Rick will get on the phone with you and start the process of picking apart your operations to make sure you're running it as efficiently as you can.
Okay.
Any concluding thoughts, Rick?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. I always say there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's just you have to be willing to roll up your sleeves a bit and kind of look for it, because I think we can always raise the bar. Even if you're a successful company and you feel like you're profitable and you've got a great culture, your workers and your employees have a great culture, awesome. I still think there's a chance to raise the bar some more, because there's always this thing out there that if you stay stagnant for a year or two, your competition is going to improve, and all of a sudden you're not getting the same types of work that you used to do. So don't take it for granted. I mean, you always force yourself to be on the cutting edge, to just push a little bit more. And there's a lot of coaching and mentoring that can happen from the business owners and the upper management side down to the worker level and supervisory level. I always try to instill that into my visits with folks, right? What are you doing to instill a learning environment in your culture, in your firm, in your working business? So there's those opportunities there, and it doesn't have to be woodworking business. It can be any kind of business, right? And you said it too. It could be in the administrative side where we're just providing service, right? There's always a way to look for opportunities, cut out the waste. I mean, I'm a lean guy, and there's lots of waste we can talk about. There's overproduction, there's waiting, unnecessary transport of goods, inappropriate processing, too much inventory of product, unnecessary movement of people, defects, rework, we talked about that. But there's also underutilization of people, and there's also safety complications. So those are some of the things that I look for, in an environment, when I get to go on the shop floor and see processes and see people moving with the product. And it's the same thing. If I see a video, we'll be able to pick up some of those things. Not all of them, but from a high level, we'll be able to pick something up.
Well, you have the benefit of perspective, right? Because you've seen so many shops. I could tell by your beard you've been doing this a while. And by the fact that
there's some sawdust in there. I just brushing it out this morning, and I saw some sawdust in there still. So,
but it's that kind of perspective that many of us miss. Like think about the typical day of somebody running a really good shop right now. They wake up in the morning, they get in their car, their truck, they drive to the shop, they do their work. When they get back in the truck, they drive home. So they get to see their shop all the time, right? It might be a little bit different for people that are in their industry associations. I know you're the president of your regional chapter, so you maybe toured other shops. But if we don't have the opportunity to do that, we start to think our shop is the only shop, and it's that echo chamber.
Right.
And so I think having somebody like you come along with the perspective of having seen probably hundreds of shops, I'm trying to be polite, thousands, maybe.
Well, a lot.
A whole lot.
Yeah.
You'd be able to look at something and go, hang on, tell me more about that. Tell me more why that left-hand feed is on that side when you reverse, and the things that you see that you're used to seeing are the kind of things I might be taking for granted because I see them every day.
Yeah. For sure.
Let's end this with this question. I know you're doing marathon training. How's your training coming along?
Well, I mean, I didn't get to run my marathon this year because of COVID, obviously. And so the training's going well, but I'm sure anxious to actually, apply that training to a race. So, it's going well, and I keep going, and hopefully we'll run it next year, and then we'll see how that goes.
Are there any virtual ways for you to run marathons? Are they having a check-in, check-out?
I had that option, but I declined to utilize it. I'm sort of a guy that I want to run the real thing, and if it's a virtual one, I'll just keep doing my training, and that'll be fun. But there was that opportunity to do a virtual run, and just send in your time. But not that it would count anyway, but it's just to have the community and the social part of it, and the connectivity, I guess, and the networking side of it was there right that way. So
have you always been a long distance runner?
I was doing it in high school, so I've always done it. I haven't done a lot of marathons though, so this is something I only took up the last 3 or 4 years that I've started doing marathons. So enjoy it quite a bit.
Well, good. Hopefully you can keep us up to date as to what you're doing, what your progress is like, and I hope one day we get to the point where we can read your name in the. Geez, I almost said newspaper, Rick. God. We could see your name in the standings and see what times you're posting. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining us for the show. People listening, thank you so much for joining in. You know how to get in touch with Rick and I, and we look forward to hearing from you. All right. Thanks, Rick.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Dom.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.